opening hymn this morning is Morning Has Broken. It is number 38 in the UU Silver Hymnal. Although the song was popularized by Cat Stevens, it was originally a Christian hymn written by English author Eleanor Farjeon in 1931, and then set to a traditional Scottish Gaelic tune, Bunasan. It's appropriate to include this song in this service because many people are celebrating Easter today. And this particular song is nostalgic for Diana since it was played during UU Easter services in her youth. The theme was written to give thanks to each day. The song is arranged by Tom Devine and sung by the UUCC choir. So now, please rise in body and or spirit and add your voice or just listen to this beautiful hymn, Morning Has Broken.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweep the rains new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
Today's reading is In Blackwater Woods. It's a poem by Mary Oliver. In this poem, in its precise and brilliant description of a forest fire near Blackwater Pond on Cape Cod, where Mary Oliver lived for many years, this poem embodies the poet's deep love of nature and her close and clear-eyed attention, even to its tragedies, attitudes that the world desperately needs. So here is In Blackwater Woods by Mary Oliver. Look, the trees are turning their own bodies into pillars of light, are giving off the rich fragrance of cinnamon and fulfillment. The long tapers of cattails are bursting and floating away over the blue shoulders of the ponds. And every pond, no matter what its name is nameless now. Every year, everything I have ever learned in my lifetime leads back to this, the fires, and the black river of loss, whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us will ever know. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing Your own life depends on it. And when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. And now Bill will introduce our worship leader for today.
It is with great pleasure that I introduce our worship leader today, Diana Luykx. The title of her sermon is Spiritual Envy, an Atheist Reflection. Diana Luykx is a lifelong Unitarian Universalist from Miami, Florida, and has lived on the coast since 2013. She is in her element as a medical social worker at a nonprofit in San Francisco. Diana is a proud and recent graduate of the UUA's Shared Pulpit class. She enjoys reading, tennis, and playing the oboe. Diana's mother, Nancy Palmer, is a founding member of UUCC. Welcome, Diana.
Thank you, Bill, and welcome all of you on this very special day where people are celebrating Easter, Passover, and Ramadan all over the world. Two things I love are bookmarks and UU history of all kinds. Our Unitarian Universalist history, by its nature, takes us to times and places where religious freedom and democratic principles were central to the conversation. Where our Unitarian Universalist history weaves into the history of the United States, I feel especially patriotic, and I feel especially UU. Studying our UU heritage gives me a place in history. And bookmarks help me keep my place in other narratives, although my favorite bookmarks are hiding somewhere in books that are long awaiting my return. Somewhere in my misplaced treasures is a bookmark with a printed list of famous Unitarians and Universalists. The one it lists are mostly from the early 19th and 20th centuries, but there are more recent ones as well. Cartoonist and creator of The Simpsons, Matt Groening, folk musician and activist Pete Seeger, and one you may not have heard of, Tim Berners-Lee, who developed the World Wide Web of internet existence of which we are a part. No, that's not the seventh principle. Sorry about that. When I come across lists like this, I get motivated to do some fact checking to see if we can really claim this list of luminaries as fellow UUs. That is how I learned about the spirituality of Christopher Reeve, stage actor, activist, and Superman of film and of my heart. He became a Unitarian late in his life. I also learned that Reeve and I shared something else besides Unitarian Universalism. We have both been members of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which was formed in 1976 to promote the separation of church and state and to advocate for the civil rights of atheists, agnostics, and non-theists. Our national organization, the Unitarian Universalist Association, does that too, promotes separation of church and state, and advocates for civil rights of the not-so-spiritual. You may remember that Christopher Reeve suffered a terrible accident during a horseback riding competition when he was 43, breaking his neck. Doctors were able to repair his neck, but not his injured spinal cord. He was still strong, his brain still intelligent, but there was simply no way for him to move any part of his body below his head. The man of steel became an invalid, paralyzed from the neck down, dependent on others for his most basic needs. After his accident, Reeve recounted how people would come up to him and ask him his religion. As he told it, family, friends, and well-wishers from around the world assured me that prayers and my faith in God would comfort me. I tried to pray, but I didn't feel any better, nor did I make any kind of connection with God. In an interview on Larry King Live, Reeve said, "The truth is that I only found a relationship very recently that I can reconcile with a lifelong quest for the meaning of spirituality. Gradually, I have come to believe that spirituality is found in the way we live our daily lives. We don't have to know what form it takes or exactly where it exists. Just to honor it and try to live by it is enough. Because we are human, we will often fail, but at least we know that we do not deserve to be punished. That knowledge makes us safe and willing to try again. As Reeves' personal spirituality evolved, he said he had no idea he was becoming a Unitarian Universalist. It happened after losing so much of what he had worked for his whole life. Reeve had as much cause as anyone to believe in miracles, but what he did believe in was persistence, the healing power of his mind on his body, and the power of rehabilitation after insurance stops paying. A part of Reeves' life that is less widely known than his Superman phase is a couple of years after his accident, when he made his directing debut with the 1997 made-for-TV drama In the Gloaming, which picked up 5 Emmy nominations. The following year, he returned to television in a remake of Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, for which he won a Screen Actors Guild Award. He still had superpowers. Just 3 years after his accident, he taught his 6-year-old son to ride a bike without training wheels, just by patiently talking him through it. By 2003, after years of intense therapy and practice, he could voluntarily lift his head and move his fingers, his legs, and his toes to the amazement and delight of his doctors. He became able to breathe without a ventilator for short periods of time before his death in 2004 at the age of 52. So Reeve and I were both in the seemingly contradictory position of paying membership dues to the Freedom of Religion Foundation while attending Sunday services and practicing a religion. Seeking freedom from religion while at the same time claiming a religion often leaves me with some explaining to do. Please, let me explain. As suggested in the 7th principle of Unitarian Universalism, I do respect the interdependent web of existence of which we are a part. I appreciate its beauty. I am moved. But I stop short of a sense of wonder. Hiking in Colorado, watching cloud formations in the sky above the Florida Everglades, and the experience of living in small coastal cities all can give me a fleeting feeling that there's something more to being human than my sensory experience. I can tell you with conviction that Atlanta, Georgia is a spiritual vortex, just as much as Sedona, Arizona. Because Jane Fonda moved to Atlanta and became a born-again evangelical Christian. But if I were in Atlanta this weekend, I would be at the American Atheist National Convention with some of my UU friends. A yearning for the mystery eludes me. I don't feel spiritual, and I'm not sure I miss it. However, recently I heard of the book Spiritual Envy, An Agnostic's Quest by Michael Krasny. I know something about spiritual envy. My Unitarian Universalist childhood in the 1970s was unforgettable. In my 6th grade Sunday school class, I was cast as the Pharaoh's sister in a Passover play. That's a princess role in Sunday school. What would I have to be spiritually envious about? Both of my parents were educated in science and liberal arts. We attended the UU Church in Miami, Florida, although I recall my father really came for the Friday night folk dancing. Being raised UU came to form a part of my identity long before I consciously chose it. I also strongly identify as an atheist. In our UU communities, that's okay. Now, envy is not an emotion I normally enjoy. When I envy a friend for some part of her happiness, I don't feel like my best self. But when I meet people who take comfort in prayer, when someone says they feel lighter when they turn their plans over to a higher power, and when I see those who rejoice at the idea of meeting departed loved ones again in heaven, I do feel envious. I want some of what they have. Like my friends who turn their lives over to God, I too notice that the future does not unfold as I'd planned. When I swim into the surf and feel the pull of the ocean, that is a power greater than myself. And I believe that wherever loved ones depart to, I am going there too. My exploration of these questions may sound like a quest, but to me it feels like an arrival. I am an atheist not because I am more reasonable than anyone else. I just seem to be wired that way. I don't believe in any supernatural forces that I can think of. The closest I can come to an understanding and respect for religious ideas is to find them occasionally beautiful. But I can advocate for freedom from religion and still enjoy being with people who draw from a well of spiritual belief. As I go forth, I will cultivate a sense of spiritual envy. It's a way to be inspired by others and to stay curious about people who believe in different things than I do. Someday soon, I'm going to watch the film in which Christopher Reeve's Superman flies through the air, and I am going to experience a sense of wonder. I give many thanks to our UU ancestors, and I'm glad that Christopher Reeve's, my first live-action Superman, is among them. And I thank you all for being spiritually enviable.